The space station floated in the darkness between stars. It was massive. It was beautiful. It was home to over 50,000 aliens from 100 different worlds. And today, it would host a test that would change everything. Sergeant Park Tae-ho sat in the waiting area and cleaned his boots. He did not look at the towering walls of crystal and light. He did not stare at the aliens walking past him with their strange bodies and stranger eyes. He simply rubbed the cloth over his boots in slow, steady circles. Lieutenant Kim Hana stood beside him. She was nervous. Her hands kept moving, touching her uniform, adjusting her collar, checking her tablet. She had been assigned to watch over Tae-ho during this cultural exchange. But she knew the truth. This was not an exchange. This was a test. "Sergeant," she said quietly, "are you sure about this?" Tae-ho did not look up. "They asked for a volunteer. I volunteered. You know what they want to do. They want to break you. They want to prove humans are just violent animals. I know. And you still volunteered?" Tae-ho finally looked at her. His eyes were calm. There was no fear in them. There was no anger either. Just a deep, quiet stillness, like a lake that had not moved in 1,000 years. "Someone had to," he said. Then he went back to cleaning his boots. High Observer Velik watched the human through the glass. He was tall for an Orth, nearly 3 meters, with skin like polished silver and eyes that held no pupils. He had studied primitive species for 200 years. He had seen warriors from a dozen worlds. None of them impressed him. And this human impressed him least of all. "Look at him," Velik said to his assistant. "He cleans his footwear. He does not examine our technology. He does not ask questions. He sits there like an animal waiting for feeding time." Sub-observer Nira stood beside him. She was younger, smaller, and far less certain than her superior. "Perhaps he is calm because he is confident." Velik made a sound of disgust. "Confident? In what? Humans have been in space for barely 2 centuries. They still fight wars among themselves. They are children playing with fire. Children who survived the Syndicate invasion," Nira said quietly. Velik's eyes narrowed. He did not like to be reminded of that. 5 years ago, the Syndicate had attacked Earth. They had expected an easy conquest. Instead, they had found something else. Something that made them retreat. Something that made them afraid. Velik did not believe the stories. Humans were primitive. They were lucky. Nothing more. "Today we will prove the truth," he said. "Prepare the simulation." The Apex Predator simulation was the most advanced psychological testing system in the galaxy. It connected directly to the subject's brain. It created perfect illusions of terror. It found the deepest fears and made them real. Every species that had ever been tested had broken. Some in hours. Some in minutes. The strongest had lasted 4 hours before their minds collapsed. Velik expected the human to last perhaps 30 minutes. That would be generous. The testing chamber was circular and white. In the center sat a single chair covered in wires and sensors. Tae-ho walked in without hesitation. He sat down without being told. The technician approached to attach the neural connectors. "This may feel strange," the technician said. "You may experience some discomfort." Tae-ho said nothing. He closed his eyes. Behind the observation glass, dozens of aliens had gathered to watch. Representatives from 20 worlds, scientists, military observers. All of them wanted to see the human break. All of them wanted proof that humanity was not worthy of respect. Hana stood among them, her hands clenched at her sides. She wanted to stop this, but she could not. All she could do was watch. "Beginning level 1, Velik announced. His voice was full of satisfaction. "Basic terror response. Let us see how long the primitive lasts. The machine hummed. The lights dimmed. On the monitors, Taiho's brain activity spiked as the simulation took hold. 6 seconds passed. Then the alarms started screaming. Red lights flashed across every console. The hum of the machine became a shriek, then died completely. Smoke rose from 2 of the processors. Technicians ran to their stations, their fingers flying over controls. What happened? Velik demanded. What went wrong? The lead technician's voice shook when she answered. Sir, the simulation did not fail. It was rejected. Rejected? What does that mean? His mind refused to accept it as real. He did not fight the illusion. He did not panic. He simply did not believe it. The system could not find any fear response to amplify. It had nothing to work with. Velik turned to look at the human. Taiho sat in the chair exactly as he had before. His eyes were still closed. His breathing was slow and even. His heart rate, displayed on the monitor, was actually lower than before the test began. He had not moved. He had not flinched. He had not even opened his eyes. That is impossible, Velik whispered. Hana felt something strange growing in her chest. It took her a moment to recognize it. It was pride. The other observers were murmuring now, some in confusion, some in disbelief, a few in something that might have been fear. A technician carefully removed the connectors from Taiho's head. He opened his eyes, looked around at the chaos, and stood up. Are we done? He asked. Nobody answered him. He shrugged, walked back to the waiting area, sat down, and picked up his cloth. Then he went back to cleaning his boots. The observation room was full of arguments. Scientists shouted at technicians. Military observers demanded explanations. Everyone had a theory. Hardware failure, software glitch, human cheating, anything except the truth. Velik stood in the center of it all, his silver face dark with anger. 200 years of research. Thousands of subjects tested. And now a primitive human had broken his machine in 6 seconds without even trying. Run a full diagnostic, he ordered. Check every system. There must be an error. Sir, the lead technician said carefully, we have already checked. 3 times. There's no error. The machine worked perfectly. The humans simply did not respond to the fear stimuli. Every creature, fear. It is a biological necessity. Without fear, a species cannot survive. Perhaps, Nira said from the corner of the room, humans feel fear differently. Velik turned to her. His eyes were cold. Explain. Nira stepped forward. She was nervous, but she had been thinking about this since the moment the simulation failed. We designed the test based on universal fear responses. Fear of death. Fear of pain. Fear of the unknown. But what if humans have already faced so much fear that our simulation seems small to them? Small? Level 1 contains scenarios that have broken hardened warriors. Simulated scenarios, Nira said. Fake monsters. Digital pain. What if he has faced real ones? Velik was silent for a long moment. Then he straightened his back. We will test again. Double the intensity. Level 3. If the human has some resistance to basic fear, we will simply increase the pressure until he breaks. Hana had been listening from the doorway. She stepped forward. You cannot do that. Level 3 is classified as potentially dangerous. It requires special approval. I have approval, Velik said. My authority over this project is absolute. This is not right. He is not an animal for you to experiment on. Then he should not have volunteered. Hana wanted to argue more, but she knew it'd do no good. Velik had already made up his mind. All she could do was warn Tahoe. She found him in the waiting area. He was still sitting in the same spot. His boots were very clean now. "Sergeant, they are going to test you again." At double intensity. Tahoe nodded. "I heard." "You heard? How?" He pointed at a vent above his head. Alien buildings carry sound well. They do not think about acoustics. Despite everything, Hana almost smiled. "You should refuse. This could be dangerous. I know." He stood up and stretched his arms. "But if I refuse, they will think humans are cowards. They will think we only passed the first test by luck. We need to show them something else." "Show them what?" Tahoe looked at her. For just a moment, she saw something deep in his eyes. Not fear, not anger. Something older and heavier than both. "That we are not afraid because we have nothing to fear," he said. "We are not afraid because we have already lost everything. And we are still here." The second test began an hour later. This time, more observers had gathered. Word had spread across the station. The human who broke the simulation. Everyone wanted to see what would happen next. Corporal Yoon Sang-min had arrived on a transport that morning. He was young, only 23, and he had served under Tahoe for 2 years. When he heard about the test, he demanded to be allowed to watch. He stood beside Hana, his fists tight at his sides. They cannot do this to him. He agreed to it. Because he is Sergeant Park, he agrees to everything that might help others. He never thinks about himself. Hana looked at the young soldier. "You know him well. I know him enough." Sangmin's voice was quiet now. "I know he does not sleep well. I know he wakes up in the night and walks alone. I know he carries things that would crush most men." He paused. This simulation cannot show him anything he has not already seen. Not in that machine. In his own head. Every single night, the machine hummed to life. The lights dimmed. Velik watched the monitors with hungry eyes. "Level 3, he announced. "Sustained psychological assault. Beginning now." On the screens, Tahoe's brain activity spiked again. Higher this time. The simulation was flooding his mind with images of terror, monsters, death, pain, loss. Everything designed to break a mind into pieces. 11 seconds passed. The alarm screamed again. System crashed harder this time. 3 processors burned out. A screen exploded in a shower of sparks. The lights flickered across the entire observation deck. And through it all, Tahoe sat perfectly still. But this time, the observers noticed something new. Something that made even Velik take a step backward. Tahoe's vital signs were on the screen. His heart rate, his breathing, his stress hormones. His heart rate had not increased during the simulation. It had decreased. By the time the system crashed, his pulse was slower than a sleeping child. He was calmer inside the nightmare than outside it. "That is not possible," someone whispered. Velik walked to the chamber door. He entered without permission. He stood in front of the human, who was now opening his eyes and looking up at him. "How?" Velik demanded. "How did you resist?" Tahoe looked at the alien for a long moment. It was the first time he had made direct eye contact with any of them. "Your machine shows death," he said. His voice was quiet, soft, almost gentle. "I have held dying friends in my arms. Your fake monsters roar and scream. Real monsters cry and beg. They call for their mothers while their blood leaks between your fingers." He stood up slowly. He was shorter than Velik by a full meter. But somehow, in that moment, the alien felt small. "Come back when you have something real," Tahoe said. Then he walked past Velik, out of the chamber, back to the waiting area, and he sat down to clean his boots again. Velik could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the human's face. That calm, quiet face. Those eyes that held no fear. Those words that echoed in his mind like a curse. Come back when you have something real. He had spent 200 years studying primitive species. He had broken warriors from 100 worlds. And now this simple soldier, this cleaner of boots, had made him feel like a child playing with toys. It was unacceptable. It was impossible. It had to be fixed. Velik accessed the classified military archives. He found simulations that were never meant to be used on test subjects. Simulations designed for war, for interrogation, for breaking enemy commanders who knew secrets that could save millions of lives. He did not ask for permission. He did not file reports. He simply loaded the programs and scheduled another test. And another. And another. Over the next 3 days, Tejo was subjected to 9 separate simulations. Each one was worse than the last. Planetary extinction, infinite torture loops, the death of everyone he had ever loved, played over and over again. Scenarios that had shattered the minds of military leaders from advanced civilizations. Each test failed faster than the one before. The 6th test lasted 4 seconds. The 8th test lasted 2. The 9th test crashed before it fully started, the machine sensing something in Tejo's mind that made it refuse to connect. But something else was happening. Something Velik did not notice at first. Nira saw it. She was watching the data streams late one night when she found the anomaly. The simulation system was not just failing. It was being changed. Fragments of data were appearing in places they should not be. Strange patterns. Unfamiliar code. She traced the source. And what she found made her blood run cold. Tejo's memories were bleeding into the system. Every time the simulation connected to his mind, it pulled something back. Not just fear responses. Not just biological data. Actual memories. Images. Sounds. Feelings. The machine was designed to push nightmares into the subject's brain. But Tejo's brain was pushing back. His memories were stronger than the simulation. The first technician to be affected was a young Orth named Bellin. He was running a routine maintenance check when he accidentally accessed one of the corrupted data files. For 30 seconds, he experienced a fragment of Tejo's memory. He was found 2 hours later, sitting in the corner of the server room, shaking and crying. He could not speak. He could only repeat the same words over and over. So heavy? So heavy. How does he carry it? Nira reviewed the memory fragment he had accessed. It was from the Battle of Inchin Station, the worst battle in human history. 12,000 soldiers had held a civilian evacuation point against an enemy that outnumbered them 20 to 1. They had held for 6 hours. 6 hours of fire and blood and screaming. 6 hours of watching friends die beside them. 6 hours of choosing who to save and who to leave behind. Tejo had been 22 years old. He had carried a wounded soldier through burning rubble for 6 hours. He had talked to him the entire time, told him jokes, told him stories, promised him they would make it. The soldier had been dead since the first hour. Tejo had known. He had carried him anyway. Now that memory was loose in the station's neural network, and it was spreading. More technicians were affected, then scientists, then crew members who had nothing to do with the project. They would be working normally, and suddenly they would stop. Their eyes would go distant, and they would feel something they had never felt before. Human pain, human loss, human grief. The Arth did not have words for these feelings. They had emotions, yes, but not like this. Not this heavy, not this deep, not this endless weight that pressed down on the soul and refused to let go. Council Director Tamal arrived on an emergency shuttle. He was furious. Reports were flooding his office. crew members breaking down, systems malfunctioning. And at the center of it all, one human who still sat in the waiting area, cleaning his boots. "Shut it down," Tamal ordered. "Seal the simulation chamber. Quarantine all affected systems." "It is too late," Nira said quietly. "The memories have spread too far. They are in the main network now. Half the station has been exposed. Then purge the network." "We cannot. The memories have merged with core systems. If we purge them, we lose life support, navigation, communications, everything." Tamal stared at her. "You are telling me that one human's memories have infected an entire space station?" "Yes, sir. And we can't remove them?" "No, sir. We can only wait for them to fade. Or," she hesitated, or we ask the human for help." Valak had been silent through all of this. He stood by the observation window, looking down at the testing chamber. His hands were shaking. His silver skin had gone pale. He had tried to break the human. Instead, the human had broken him. And now, for the first time in his long life, Valak understood something terrible. Something he had refused to believe. Humans were not dangerous because they were violent. They were dangerous because they survived. They took the worst the universe could offer, and they kept going. They carried memories that would destroy other species, and they called it normal. The simulation had tried to show Taiho fear. Instead, Taiho had shown the simulation what real fear looked like. And now the whole station was learning the lesson. In the waiting area, Taiho looked up. He could feel something changing in the air. Something shifting. The aliens who passed by looked at him differently now. Not with contempt. Not with curiosity. With respect. And maybe a little fear. He went back to his boots. There was a scuff mark on the left one that would not come out. He rubbed at it patiently. Some things took time. The station was falling apart. Not physically. The walls still stood. The lights still worked. But something deeper was breaking. Arth crew members wandered the corridors with strange expressions on their faces. Some were crying and did not know why. Others sat alone in empty rooms, staring at nothing, feeling weights they could not name pressing down on their chests. They were feeling human.nira found. Hana in the observation deck. The lieutenant was watching the stars, her face tired and worried. "We need your help," Nira said. "I know. I have been watching." Hana turned to face the alien. "But I do not know what we can do. The memories are Taiho's. Only he can control them. Then we must ask him. He is just a soldier. He did not ask for any of this. Neither did we." Nira's voice was soft. "But here we are." They found Taiho in the waiting area. He had finally finished cleaning his boots. Now he was just sitting, his hands resting on his knees, his eyes watching the aliens move past him. "Sergeant Park," Hana said. "We need to talk." "I know. I can feel it." He tapped his temple. "The machine connected to my brain. Some part of that connection is still there. I can sense the memory spreading. I can feel the crew members who touch them." He paused. "They are not ready for what they are feeling. Can you stop it?" "Maybe. If I go back into the simulation." Nira stepped forward. "That is exactly what we need. If you enter the system willingly, you might be able to control what memories are shared. You could stabilize the network." Taiho looked at her. His eyes were tired. So tired. Anna realized she had never noticed before how old he looked. He was only 34, but his eyes belonged to a man who had lived 100 years. "You want me to share more of myself," he said. "To open my mind to strangers." "Yes. Do you understand what you were asking?" Nira hesitated. "I think I do." "No, you do not." Taiho stood up slowly. "But I will do it anyway. The simulation chamber had been repaired. New processors, new screens, new safeguards. None of them would matter. This time, the machine was not the one in control. Taeho sat in the chair. The technicians attached the neural connectors. Around him, the observation deck was full once again. But this time, the observers were not here to watch him break. They were here to learn. Director Tamal stood at the front. "Sergeant Park, are you certain about this?" "No," Taeho said, "but I am doing it anyway. That is what humans do." He closed his eyes. The machine hummed to life. This time, there was no assault, no attack. The simulation simply opened a door, and Taeho walked through it. He began to share. He showed them his mother's kitchen, the small apartment in Bizen where he had grown up, the smell of soup cooking on the stove, the sound of rain on the windows, the feeling of coming home after his first deployment, so tired he could barely stand, and finding her waiting for him with open arms. He showed them Sang Min, the young corporal who told terrible jokes at the worst possible times, the way he would laugh at his own humor even when no one else did. The night watches they had shared, talking about nothing and everything, keeping each other awake and alive. He showed them the Battle of Inchin Station. Not just the horror this time. The other parts. The parts that made the horror bearable. The moment his squad made their decision. They knew they could not win. They knew most of them would die. But the evacuation shuttles needed 10 more minutes. 10 minutes for 30,000 civilians to escape. And so they looked at each other, nodded once, and raised their weapons. They did not fight because they thought they would survive. They fought because someone had to. He showed them the sunrise the next morning. The way the light had broken through the smoke and dust. The way he had sat among the rubble, covered in blood that was mostly not his own, and watched the sky turn gold and pink and beautiful. He had cried then, not from sadness, not from relief, just because it was beautiful, just because he was still there to see it. The memories flowed through the network. Crew members stopped in their tracks as the images washed over them. And this time, they did not break. They understood. They felt the weight that Taeho carried, but they also felt how he carried it. With hope, with love, with small moments of beauty stolen from the darkness. With soup and bad jokes and sunrises. This was humanity. Not the violence, not the war, but the stubborn, impossible hope that kept burning no matter how much pain tried to put it out. The simulation stabilized. The corrupted data organized itself. The network stopped failing, and 50,000 aliens looked at each other with new eyes. Velik stood alone in the observation deck. Tears ran down his silver face. He did not try to stop them. A young technician approached him hesitantly. "Hi, observer. Are you well?" Velik turned to look at the human in the simulation chair. Taeho's eyes were still closed. His face was peaceful. "I have been a fool," Velik said quietly. "I thought I was studying him. I thought I understood. But I knew nothing." He walked to the chamber door. He entered slowly. The technicians watched, but did not stop him. Velik stood before the chair and waited. After a moment, Taeho opened his eyes. "Thank you," Velik said. The words were strange in his mouth. He had never said them to a human before. "For sharing this. For helping us understand." Taeho looked at him. There was no anger in his face. No satisfaction at seeing his enemy brought low. Just quiet acceptance. "Everyone carries weight," Taeho said. "The trick is not to carry it alone." He closed his eyes again and let the last of his memories flow into the waiting network. Somewhere in the station, an Earth mother hugged her child for the first time in years. Somewhere else, two rivals ended a long argument and shared a meal together. Somewhere else, a lonely technician reached out to a friend she had ignored for too long. Humanity was spreading, not through conquest, not through war, through connection. 3 months had passed since the incident on the station. The Galactic Council had called a special session. Representatives from 200 worlds filled the great chamber, their bodies of all shapes and sizes, their eyes of all colors and configurations, all focused on the central platform where Council Director Tummel stood. "We are here to discuss the status of humanity," Tummel announced. His voice carried to every corner of the vast room. For 20 years, they have been classified as a provisional member species. Dangerous, violent, unsuitable for full integration. Today, we will vote to change that classification. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Many of the representatives had heard stories about what happened on the observation station. Some believed them. Others thought they were exaggerated. A few insisted the whole thing was human propaganda. Tummel raised his hand for silence. "Before we vote, I have asked High Observer Velik to share his findings. As many of you know, Velik has spent 2 centuries studying primitive species. He was the one who originally classified humanity as dangerous. He was also the one who designed the tests that were conducted 3 months ago." Velik rose from his seat and walked to the platform. He moved slowly. Something had changed in him since the incident. He seemed smaller somehow, quieter, more careful with his words. He stood before the assembly and said nothing for a long moment. Then he began to speak. "I was wrong." The chamber went silent. In 200 years, no one had ever heard Velik admit error. "I classified humans as dangerous because they fight wars, because they kill each other, because they have violence written into their history like words in a book." He paused. "I was not wrong about these facts. Humans are violent. They do fight. They have done terrible things to each other and to the worlds they touch." Several representatives nodded. This was what they expected to hear, but I was wrong about what it meant. Velik looked out at the assembly. His silver eyes were wet. "I thought humans were dangerous because they were violent. I was wrong. I feared them for the wrong reason. They are not dangerous because they fight." He took a breath. "They are dangerous because they continue." The chamber was completely still. 3 months ago, I tried to break a human soldier. I used our most advanced technology, our most powerful psychological weapons. I threw everything we had at him. And do you know what happened? He almost laughed. Almost. He broke us instead. Not through strength, not through intelligence, through something we had no category for. Through sheer, stubborn refusal to give up. Velik walked to the edge of the platform. He looked directly at the representatives from the most powerful worlds, the ones who had voted against humanity for 20 years. I have studied his memories. I have felt what he feels. And I tell you now, you have no idea what humans are capable of. Not their weapons, not their ships, their hearts. Their impossible, unbreakable hearts. He pointed to the chamber doors. That soldier I tested? He has lost friends. He has seen horrors that would destroy our minds. He carries grief that never fades and guilt that never sleeps. Every morning, he wakes up. He puts on his boots. He does his duty. He finds reasons to smile. Velik's voice cracked. We have studied 1,000 species. We have never found one that can do what humans do. They lose everything, and they stand up. They face extinction, and they laugh. They carry the weight of the universe on their shoulders and call it Tuesday. He turned back to the full assembly. I was afraid of humans because they fight. I should have been afraid of them because they hope. Because no matter what we do to them, no matter what the universe throws at them, they refuse to stop hoping. That is not a primitive species. That is not a dangerous animal. That is something else. Something we have never seen before. He walked back to his seat. His voice was quiet now, barely loud enough to hear. Vote how you will. But know this. Whether you make them allies or enemies, humans will not change. They will continue. They always continue. The vote was unanimous. 200 worlds, 200 votes. Not a single one against. Humanity was no longer provisional. They were full members of the Galactic Council, equal partners in the future of the galaxy. On Earth, in a small apartment in Bizen, Tejo sat in his mother's kitchen. She had made soup. The same soup she always made when he came home. The recipe had not changed in 30 years. His communicator buzzed. He looked at the screen. It was Hana. Sergeant Park. The vote just finished. We are in full membership. You did it. Tejo nodded. Good. Good. Good? Is that all you have to say? You changed the course of history. I sat in a chair and remembered things. History changed itself. Hana laughed. You are impossible. So people keep telling me. He ended the call and went back to his soup. His mother watched him from across the table. What was that about? Politics. Anything important? Tejo thought about it. 200 worlds, a galaxy of possibilities. The future of humanity changed forever. Not really. The door burst open. Sangmin stumbled in, his eyes wide, his voice loud enough to wake the neighbors. Sergeant, did you hear? We did it. Full membership. You are a hero. They are talking about statues. Memorials. Holidays. They want to name a ship after you. Tejo did not look up from his bowl. The soup is getting cold. Sit down. Sangmin blinked. But Sergeant, this is the biggest moment in human history. And this is my mother's soup. I've been waiting 3 months for this soup. Sit down. Sangmin sat. Tejo's mother smiled and brought him a bowl. Sangmin looked at the soup, then at Tejo, then at the soup again. It does smell good. It is. They ate in silence. Outside the window, the stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. The same stars that humanity would now explore as equals. The same stars that held 50,000 aliens who had learned what it meant to be human. Tejo finished his soup. He leaned back in his chair. He looked at his mother. He looked at Sangmin. This was it. This was what he had fought for. Not politics. Not power. Not glory or statues or ships with his name. This. A warm kitchen. Good soup. People he loved. Everything else was just noise. His mother refilled his bowl without being asked. He picked up his spoon and started eating again. In the sky, the stars kept shining. They had been shining for billions of years. They would shine for billions more. And somewhere among them, humanity was just getting started. The end.